Hello, hello. Well, welcome to the ComicBase Livestream. I am your host, Pete Beckford, and for the next probably just about 30 to 45 minutes today, I'm going to try to make this one a short one. We'll be talking about things comic-basey and comic-y and a little bit of industry tech news and so forth. This is pretty much an odds and ends show. I don't have a big theme for this one, but there is a fair amount of just rando tech stuff I wanted to at least point out, and hopefully it's somewhat entertaining. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining. Want to say hi to the folks here on the StreamYards and the Facebooks. And by the way, if you have a question you'd like me to answer during the show, please put it in the chat to @ComicBase TV, and that helps those pop up, and I'll handle as many of these as I can. I want to say hello, first of all, to Mike Beam, first in here from Vancouver, Washington. Sounds like you're a little under the weather, but hope feel better soon, Mike. Robbie Weinberg's now from Toledo. Oro Viejo's out here. Gregory Hector Mod is, of course, in the house and so forth. And a lot of advice on medical conditions in the chat here. It's like it's middle-aged people. It's like a list of all our favorite medications, and none of them are the fun ones. But anyway, guys, welcome. And want to get to it. Brian Price from Dallas, Texas, just jumping in. Hello. All right. So, top story of the day is we just released ComicBase 24.1. And if you're keeping score of all the interim builds, I believe 1211 is the exact build number. We slipped it out, and then within about an hour, someone had made a feature suggestion that we managed to slip in there right after the fact, just to make picture animations. The picture displays look a little bit better when you click on a picture. So if you like that, go ahead and make sure you're downloading build 1211, and you will have that. But if you just go down to my account and then registrations at comicbase.com and just click the download button, you'll get the very latest version of ComicBase. Always, if you're using ComicBase, all you have to do is say internet, check for updates, and it will tell you all about the new ComicBase 24.1, and you'll always, as I say, get the latest version whenever you download. But some of the things that are new in this one, it's an odd grab bag of things that have happened since 8 or 9 months since we released ComicBase 2024. Some of the ones that are top of the list, it tweaks the ID labels to give more space to the title. So if you're like me and your close-up vision is not what it once was, it makes these things a little less brutal, especially when you get to these incredibly hard to read titles that are 7 miles long, so we have to shrink the type to fit, and so you wind up with 3-point type. It's no longer 3-point anymore, so that part's good. We adjusted the quick report to allow the display of larger prices, more complicated headings, and so forth without truncating. We fixed some spurious error message that could happen when you're first upgrading the program to ComicBase 2024. The new Turkish lira, the Yani lira, which then gives it the currency name of Try, is now live in the whole thing. So if you're a Turkish comic collector, I'm sure you're thrilled. One that's actually surprisingly, it sounds geeky as hell, but it actually makes a big difference, is when you're reporting now, there was an option on certain reports to show only owned plus regular items. And we've made that a little tighter than we did before. It used to be that it would still show, the purpose of that is if you say you're doing a collection report or something, you want to say, well, what ones am I missing? Now, the problem, of course, is with a million variants, a million multiple printings and things like that, or annuals, book specials, things like that, it would still list all those things. It just wouldn't show you the variants. Nowadays, if you have that checked, it gives you, I think, much more what people are really looking for, which is just like, look, I'm trying to read the storyline. Have I read issue 25 or not, regardless of whether it was the 73rd printing or the variant J or whatever else. Just tell me not 25 or not. And so that actually makes that, I think, a lot more useful. So give that one a shot. We added a offline mode in case you ever your internet melts down, or our internet melts down, or the North Koreans bomb America or whatever else. If anything ever happens to our servers, it makes it so the program keeps running. So that's a useful thing. It's almost like our doomsday switch, but it just means that everything runs until our servers are back up, or until you can talk to our servers, and you won't be overly interrupted by messages saying, we have no internet connection, even though we try to refresh something. It just says, like, we're offline. Go ahead and keep doing your business. Um, we improved some searchability to the Grand Comics database. We fixed a really kind of strange bug, and thank you. I mentioned it last week. One of our Swedish customers found it that depending on your typing cadence, if you could somehow backspace out more letters than you had typed in the 2/10 of a second before it would refresh the list, it actually would. It could actually kind of cause the program to kind of go into a long, hangy kind of mode, and that was obviously no good. That is now fixed. I'm very happy to say. We work better on decimal searches in Germany. We tweaked the fine preview on the main screen to accommodate very small screens and so forth. Anyway, a lot of just random things, and I'm going to admit, and also probably about 800 other little things that are so small and obscure that they don't seem worth mentioning even to ourselves. But please do go ahead and get the latest version. You will need to be on ComicBase 24.1 before you can download this week's content update, which is coming out later on today. It is a free update for all current ComicBase users, so whenever those come out, typically once a quarter, but this one's actually been longer than most because ComicBase 2024 has been remarkably stable as a build. The weird typing thing is actually the first critical bug because it actually could cause a program hang. It's the first critical bug that's actually shown up since we launched ComicBase 2024. So otherwise, we probably would have had a quarterly update, last year. Anyway, this purpose of this one is to get everyone onto the same page. So go ahead and download that one. Just internet, check for updates from ComicBase. It only takes a minute to download and install, and you should be good to go. And hope you enjoy it. Let us know what you think. And we're always interested in your feedback on how to make the program better, what's working, what you would like to see in the future, and so forth. And like I say, we're always working on the program. And so please send your comments, and I'll give you my email right now, pbickford@human-computing.com. That is my actual real email address. So whether you're trying to sell me, hair loss products or whatever the heck or giving me really good suggestions on things, please send things there, and I will, I do read every mail that isn't spam. So there's that. All right, guys. Other things that are going on. Also, ComicBase 24.1 comes with an updated database. So we are up to 1,257,479 comics as in the database. So if you were to say file new database, that would be what you get when you install ComicBase 24.1 or 2024.1. Also, we've refreshed the picture archives. We're still in the process of refreshing like some of the big download ones. But if you download, say, the quick start pictures, there are now 1,042,242 pictures in the archive edition right now. So the picture reference on that is astronomically awesome. Even the Pro Edition, where we only show you the first picture for every title, we're now over 80,000 pictures with the program. It's stupid how much data comes with ComicBase. So hope you enjoy that. And if you were to download, new pictures and everything, you'd get, all the latest stuff. So there's that. Okay, on to other things. Free Comic Book Day is coming. I just got done binge watching Game of Thrones after I was the last guy to watch that series apparently, and so the same way that they would say winter is coming for like the first 6 series of that thing, I feel about Free Comic Book Day is coming. There are actually 48 different comic titles that are part of Free Comic Book Day, all of which have bizarre naming conventions and designations and so forth. But the good news is, as of this week's update, they will all be in ComicBase. You can find them by their barcode, which is definitely the way I would look for anything by default on these things, because Free Comic Book Day in particular is absolutely infamous for being one-offs or strangely designated reprints of older series, or just wherever they are, there's like a 50% chance they're where you expect them to be. So the way I always look for, where Free Comic Book Day is listed is, or for that matter, where I look for anything, is just get the book out, bleep it with your handy dandy barcode scanner, and you'll go straight there. That is definitely how I would go. But those will all be in there as of this week's update. You should have that later on tonight. And enjoy it when it comes out. Free Comic Books Day is, I believe, Is it the Wednesday or the Tuesday? But it's I think it's May 4th. It's May the 4th be with you. So it's not only Star Wars Day, it's also Free Comic Book Day, and that'll be in your local comic shop. Please do support your local comic book shop, especially if they're making a special effort on that day. A lot of folks are doing special signings and deals and so forth, and they give out free comic books. So that's not a bad thing. So give that a go, and I hope you all enjoy it. All right. What else do we have going on here? Let me just do a quick check of the chat here, make sure everything's cool. Let me see. Brian says, is offline mode automatic, or can we toggle it from a menu? It's automatic in that it trips automatically if we make a call to our server and we can't connect, at which point you'll see the program, you'll see a bunch of stuff just kind of dim down, and you'll see a message on the right-hand side says that the program's offline, working in offline mode. Click here if you want to retry to reconnect. So you don't. I mean, I guess if you want to go offline on purpose, just yank your internet connection for a minute, and that'll do it. It's actually how we tested some of this. But the way to reconnect is just click over on the right hand side there when you see the message says you're offline, and if your internet's back and our internet's back, then it'll automatically come back. And a whole bunch of program features that require being connected to the internet, such as downloading status off Atomic Avenue and getting the latest downloading covers and things like that. All that stuff comes back online as soon as the server connection is restored. Oh, and thank you. Free Comic Book Day is always on Saturday. Yes, thank you very much for that. But yeah, I did get the date right. I think May the 4th. Let me just pull up the calendar. And yes, indeed, I did get the date right. But yes, okay. All right. Other things that are interesting in the world. Well, I think that's about it for that part. Oh, actually, let me do a little bit of tech news. So, ComicBase, not ComicBase, Windows 24H2, Windows 11 has just been released to manufacture, RTM as they call it, which is basically just a way of saying it's gone through the extended testing and they think it's okay to start passing out to the people who distribute it on systems, so they can start building things. They don't actually expect the thing to hit the streets for a few more months. If you're in one of the early release channels, which I think there's a couple of them at this point, I think they call them the Canary and the something else ones, you can get it now. I will say, having looked at the coverage of the 24H2, and this is like the big second half release of Windows 11, the feature list is scant. It is, if you like Copilot, the Windows AI feature for searching and whatnot, it can do more stuff now. It can control more settings. You can command it around with your voice. They added some AI features to Notepad. So Notepad is, of course, everyone's favorite word processor. Strangely enough, it is actually the one I use for doing the show notes here. But you can do things like saying, I'd like this to be longer, or I'd like this to be where else, and it'll suggest writing for you in Notepad. I think Notepad also got a spell checker. But honestly, other than that, and some very obscure things like, better hearing aid support through Bluetooth, there's not a lot there to, if you're not excited about Windows 11 before, there's not a lot that will turn it around for you. Anyway, but do be aware that that's coming out. The Windows 12, meanwhile, has been delayed until 2025. A lot of people were talking about that this Windows 24 H2 was meant to be Windows 12. If so, man, they better oomph it up a little bit more, because other than a few new icons, you'd never know it wasn't exactly what you were running before. So anyway, that's a thing that's happening. But in the meantime, another thing that is starting to get on your radar, or at least should be on your radar, is that Windows 10, of all things, is about 14 months away from end of lifing, which is to say that's the date at which point they will no longer do any kind of updates for it whatsoever, including virus and security fixes. So basically, if you're still running Windows 10, start finding a way to not be running Windows 10 in the next year or so. Now, the biggest problem with going from Windows 10 to Windows 11 isn't, so, for once, it's not the interface or anything else like that, although, the taskbar centered thing is weird for me, but good news, you can turn that off. No, the biggest problem with Windows 10 going to anything more modern is that Windows 11 has a pretty hefty requirement base for the kind of hardware you need to have in order to even run it. You can't install it unless you do some hacky things, but you can't officially install Windows 11 unless you have a trusted platform module 2.0 and a few other type of modern system features. They're doing this for security and so forth. It's not like we haven't known this wasn't the deal for a few years now, but there's a really good chance that your older PC, if it's more than about 4 or 5 years old, literally can't install Windows 11. So it might be time to upgrade both your machine and your software if you're looking at this problem a year from now. Because, like I say, 14 or so months from now, so next October, which I guess no, that's a little more than 14 months. But that's the end of lifing thing is no joke. When they stop releasing security patches, that's the time when you no longer want to have anything on that computer that you love, at least if it's connected to the internet. So anyway, toward that effort, if you are looking for a cheap way to get a legitimate copy of Windows 11, I did happen to across this one, and it's worth pointing out. Let me see if I can bring this up in a browser that's not too obnoxious. Well, this is going to be a bit of a trick. Let me think about this for a second. Okay. Okay. Sorry about this. Yes. So if you go over to a Groupon of all places, Groupon, the guys who will sell you like adult painting classes and spa days out and stuff like that, they have a line on right now, legit copies of Windows 11 Pro license keys that you can get for, it's like $16. And there's a couple other places there, a little bit more sketch. I believe Windows 11 Pro runs for like $139 if you can get for like $124 off Amazon. But these are actually legit keys, which is to say that they will activate. They will, you can get tech support on them, and Microsoft is happy to have sold them, regardless of the fact that they're probably a little gray markety in that they were probably originally meant to be some kind of sale to like Belarus or someplace like that, where Microsoft infamously will sell things at one price to the countries that are thought to have money, and a completely different price to the people where they just don't want to have their market share taken away by Linux. And so these keys have probably been repurposed by one of the things, but I can guarantee, at least from my experience, I've used this sort of thing multiple times, and yeah, they do work. And so when I have extra PCs around the office and I want to do clean installs on them and things like that, $16 a pretty darn good price to pay for a actual fully working copy of a Windows 11 Pro key. Also, if you're in the market for Windows Office, Microsoft Office, and you don't want to do the Office 365 thing, Windows 11 Pro especially will try to shove Office 365 down your throat. This is their online version all day long. They will just bundle that sucker right in. You will have to almost take pains to get it off your machine. But if you want like the full on, it does not expire every, you don't need to pay a subscription fee every year version of Office Pro, the 2021 version, and believe me, they have not done anything with this darn program since 2021. You can get that, I want to say, for like $33 over at Stack Social. So if you're helping your mom out installing it on your PC or whatever you're doing, not a bad way to go as far as getting that kind of software. All right, and let me see what we're doing here. Brian's Stuart points out Windows 10. Still can't get my mom moved off Windows 8.1. Wow. If she is the one devoted user of Windows 8.1, then Mazel Tov, man. She should send a note to the Metro team over at Microsoft, because they have not been getting a lot of love in their lives, and it would do them good to know that someone out there in the heart of the United States really cares for their work. I was just talking to my wife the other day. Fry's Electronics is this fantastic electronics set of stores out in California. Unfortunately they're all gone now, but back in the day you could get everything from Doritos to resistors to video games to you name it, test equipment. It was all under the same stores. Like anything you needed to buy to live the geek lifestyle was all there. But I'm walking down the aisle with a friend one night, and Windows ME had just come out, and we were discussing its merits or lack thereof. And some guy was just in the aisle behind us, and he said, "Yeah, Windows ME, man, that's the biggest piece up we've ever seen." And then he just bumped up right behind us and said, "Hey, I worked on that." And At which point, I think the thing I said was something along the lines of, "Well, and this can't be a very proud day for you." But anyway, I brought that story up, and I was talking about how you shouldn't interrupt other people's conversations. But anyway, that's a thing. All right, so moving on with life, I think that's all the amusing stories I have to tell about Windowsy type things for right now. All right. On to other things. Comic-based questions, and I just have 3 of them to give tonight. So, if you have other questions, please pose them in the chat. If not, then we're going to wrap this sucker early. This will be great. First question came in says, "Hey, I've been using Comic-Base, and I started using the latest version of some version, and suddenly my machine seems to be running slower. And is it Sidekick? Is it something else? Blah blah blah." And just due to the way he was describing his problem, it sounded like it wasn't anything. It wasn't like typically every version of Comic-Base has more data than the last version, which makes it harder. But also typically every version of Comic-Base is typically faster than the version that came before it. And so if you install a new version of Comic-Base and it goes slower, then it's like, well, what happened? And in this guy's case, I said, well, there's 2 things that could be the problem. Number one, make sure you've got the latest build. And the second thing is you might have damaged indexes in your database. So an index in a database, think about it's like the way an index in a book is. So if I needed to look up, I've got a medical dictionary or a medical reference or something like that, or even a recipe book, and I want to look up any particular condition. I've got a sprained ulnar or something like that. It's very, very helpful to that point, rather than starting on page 1 and reading down every page of the book until you see the word sprain or ulnar. It's very it's very handy to be able to go to the index at the back of the book and look for either sprain or ulnar, and then say, oh yeah, you want to be on page 385. Well, databases have the same kind of idea. So there's a amount of stuff in Comic-Base where you might say things like, I would like to find all the comic books that were published on March 1st, 1953. And if we didn't have an index of all the cover dates, which says, oh, March 1st, 1953, well, here's the list, boom, like that. If we didn't have that index pre-computed, then searching through 1,250,000 records one by one says, is the cover day on this one March? No. Okay, next. Is the cover day on the next one March? No. Next. Repeat 1 million and more times, that would be very slow. So whenever you get to a point where it feels like, things have gotten slow for no reason, one thing you always got to at least wonder about is, did something go funny with one of my indexes? The indexes are typically built automatically by the database as it operates. Certain things, things can go wrong on computers. You can, have a power loss. You could, have something shut down unexpectedly on you while it was in the middle of writing something. And it is possible for the index itself to get jank to the point where it can't read up the index, and so it goes to the next best thing and says, well, I can't read the index, so let me start scrubbing through the entire program looking for the data you want, and then it just means everything takes 50 times longer than it used to. Now, luckily, there is a one-key fix built right into ComicBase, where if you suspect anything has ever gone wrong with any of your indexes, all you got to do is, when you launch ComicBase, press and hold down the Control key on your keyboard and keep it held down until you see a prompt that says, do you want to rebuild your indexes? And it says something along the lines of, you don't normally need to, but in certain circumstances, this might speed things up for you. In which case, go ahead and click yes. It'll take a few minutes. But if that sets everything right for you at that point, then easy peasy, problem solved. Another secret thing, if you guys are interested in this sort of thing, there are a number of, if you keep the Control key held down during the entire boot process, you'll basically be prompted for about every resetty, rebuildy type of thing that the program is capable of doing. I don't suggest none of them should be needed whatsoever, but that's the secret way of getting into some of these, troubleshooting features. Should you ever feel a need to, is if you hold down a Control key as you're doing things, it'll prompt you one by one, saying, did you want to reset your grading? Did you want to reset your this table, that table, the other? Did you want to recheck all your issues to recalculate the storyline credits? Did it'll go through the whole 9 yards. Another thing that's sometimes useful to do, and honestly, this is the one I would do much more frequently than I would do the Control thing, flip it over here to the other machine and flip my keyboard so I can get to it. But never forget about the file tools over here. If you go to File and then File Tools, there's a bunch of options down here. Optimized database used to be super important. Now it gets done enough automatically, not so much. But the rebuild lists over here, that's one that I do a lot, mostly because I'm working on the content side, but not a bad thing to do at least once, with your database. Can't hurt. Is go ahead and check all these things. And basically you have a choice. Do you want to rebuild the information about the individual titles? Do you want to rebuild the list of which titles you own? The item information tends to be where the bang is, because what that does, it goes through every issue in the database, whether it's a comic, a book, a magazine, or a newspaper. It goes through every record and verifies that the dates make some kind of sense. It recalculates the extended cost, the values, the pricing. Make sure all the math is done right. It does a lot of automated cleanup to the notes, so it looks for notes that are redundant, things like that. Pulls out any of the creator credits and so forth. But it does just a lot of just kind of gut cleanup on the item information, and then kind of a follow-up one. And matter of fact, if it does a lot of cleanup to your creator information, your contributors, it'll actually prompt you to do this one automatically. It'll say like, hey, I cleaned up 1,100 creator records, because one of the things that we added last time out is we added a big dictionary of not only creator names but alternate names that they're sometimes known by, which we can standardize the name on. So for instance, Art Adams and Arthur Adams are the same guy, and so when we see a credit for one, we know it's really you're talking about the same guy. So we have a standard name that he's known by, and at the moment I couldn't tell you whether it's Art or Arthur. Honestly, we went by whichever one he has signed by most. Same thing goes with things like James Tinian the Fourth, James S. Tinian. All those guys are the same guy, and so we will put all those things together. We'll do a lot of just kind of clean up in your database set. So once that's done, not a bad idea to also rebuild your list of contributors, storylines, and notes, because that's the index that we use. So when you're looking for James Tinian, and that list will pop up right away, and it won't have the old bogus entries in anymore. So rebuild list, not a bad idea. In this guy's case though, when you have just a performance issue, have a look at rebuilding your indexes. It might be your problem. In this case, I got a note right before showtime that apparently one of those two things was the problem, and so he's all good now. All right, let's see here. Got a note in the chat here from okay, so Department of Commerce. Sorry, I was buying action figures. Let me see here. Pete Cratchit says, does ComicBase come with the full spectrum of grades per Overstreet's grading system? All that and more. So we have, if you look at grading in ComicBase, so if you look under setup and then grading, we start out with, let me make this slightly less big. We start out with the standard Overstreet grades. We refer to them by their old school names, not the Overstreet at one point got they tried to ride the bandwagon after CGC came out and tried to look all cool, where they went and said, okay, well, Mint is now 10.0, and so then they'd say Mint parenthesis 10.0, near Mint 9 parenthesis 9.4. No, it meant all the same things. We have all the standard ones that are defined in the Overstreet grading guide. We did not include half grades. That is very much intentional as a default, but there's nothing at all stopping you if you do like. I mean, there are definitely people who like saying VF plus or VF, VF minus or where else. Nothing's stopping you from creating your own ones of those grades. But the ones that are defined in the Overstreet grading guide, these ones are all there, as well as CGC grades. And if you go looking at the grading sets, you can actually choose CGC, CBCS, EGS, PGX, both regular and restored grades for all the different types of collectibles that they do gradings on. And all you got to do is say, yes, this is something that I use in my collection. We wanted to make it so that the list didn't get too long and unwieldy when you're going down choosing a grade. And so if you go to grading sets and just choose which grades you actually use, in this case, the defaults are regular Overstreetish type grades and CGC. That's what's in the database by default, but you can add or remove as many of those ones as you want. The only grade you can't touch is NM. That one is sacred. It's the basis of everything, and it must always be 100% of NM grade for reasons we got into in the nth degree on the last show. Because if NM is not 100% of NM, then nothing in life makes sense anymore. All right, moving on. Let me see what else we had going on. I think, have we answered the question? I hope so. Department of Commerce says, I thought the notes were no longer affected by updates or verification. Notes, no. Okay, so when you download an update, let me go ahead and go over to the demo machine while you pull this down. All right, so when we look at an item over here, so let's look at spawn number 1. We've got item description, we've got notes, first appearance of Spawn, first appearance of Sam Burke, first appearance of Maximilian Twitch Williams, etc. Now, one of the things that we'll do if you do a rebuild lists is if someone said first appearance of Spawn, first appearance Spawn, 1: Spawn, we have a preferred editorial style, and we will say, look, those last two are redundant, and we'll strike them because they mean exactly the same thing. So we'll look for that sort of crud that creeps in over the years, and the reason crud tends to creep into the notes field is because, with the exception of doing a rebuild list of, we don't touch the notes. We figure the notes are basically for random free-form stuff, and it's really under your control. Now, we'll say things like first appearance of Swan, but if you want to say it's also Todd McFarlane's first independent comic work, or whatever you want to say, if you added a note and we added a note, so our update has one thing and you have something else, what you'll see is both notes. So we'll leave your stuff alone, but we'll tend to stack stuff onto it. Now, that's great, but one thing, and this is something we addressed last time out, that tends to, we used to do things like saying, all right, so the 1-2 edition, we would say, okay, we would say things like, well, this is the second appearance, it's the Image First 2010 edition, and that used to belong over in the notes field. And then if somebody else had said something like it's the second printing version, or it's the Image First edition, or whatever else, you'd wind up, because it was all in the notes field, the stuff that would determine what this number even meant, what the item number meant, especially with variant editions, you'd wind up with 50 different ways of saying the same thing. This is the Fabiano cover. It's the Felice Fabiano cover. It's the color. It's the color covered by Fabiano. It was nuts because we didn't have a way of overwriting your notes. So what we did for the things that refer to just the designation of what makes this item this item. In other words, what makes this 1-2, or what makes this 1/H, as opposed to just anything else. So specifically, it's meant. It's not meant to describe the issue's content at all. It's meant to simply describe why it's designated the way it's designated. That kind of stuff, we made a big push to take out of notes and to put it into a new field called item description, which we do own. So when you allow us to, when you download an update and you allow us to make changes, if there's an update to 30th anniversary blank sketch cover, or if we want to say, it's the 1 in 530th anniversary blank sketch color gold foil logo, and if there's anything else to say about that, we could make that change to the item description, whereas we never could have made it to notes because it would have stacked. So that's the thing that we did with recent editions, where we don't mess with, where we tried to get the stuff that was personal to you away from the stuff that we need to say just to say why a variant is the variant. And then lastly, let me go ahead and I'm just going to push down, check for updates here. And I'm going to basically force it to pretend there's a new update here for me by holding down the Shift key. If you look at the options over here, you do also have the option, speaking purely of the notes field, not the item description, but the notes field, is you do have the option to check off lock notes. In other words, don't allow the update to add any existing info. We have customers who have got the notes exactly the way they want them. They don't want anything that isn't something they put in themselves, and that's their right. So this is not the default, obviously, because we would like to be able to say this is the second appearance of Swamp Thing, or it's the first totally been art on whatever else. But if you've got things exactly the way you want them, you don't want us to add anything to them, you can say lock the item notes, and we will not touch your notes in any way, shape, or form. So that is hopefully relevant to the question at hand. Agent Camp or Department of Comics, I hope I answered your question for you. If I didn't, please post back in the chat, and I can gas on for even further. All right, so let's see here. Some question about. Okay, got that. Steven Nasser said, okay. Some back and forth on unrecognized things. Okay. I think, did we get everything that was relevant? Okay, I think we covered most of it. If not, it feels like the chat's self-explanatory. Oh, and Brian says, to avoid the notes issue, I moved all my stuff into custom fields called comments. Another perfect way of doing this. One thing also I would definitely suggest is don't forget that there's also a grading notes comment. So if the thing that you're in particular putting in your notes is something about, like, there's a color breaking cover bend in the upper left, it's a 1/4 inch or something like that. The right place for that isn't your notes, it's your grading notes, because one thing that's great about the grading notes is they'll always be printed on ID labels and price labels and things like that. So, and they'll get pushed up to like Atomic Avenue and all the sales venues, so that they have an idea for why something's in the condition it's in. So that's good. All right, so hopefully we answered that one. If we didn't, please post back, and we'll take it from there. Department of Commerce asks, are we able to have 2 entries for the same item? Yes, like True Believer's book in the original title or in the indices title. It's not great databasing to do that. There's definitely ambiguity sometimes about where things go. And that's another thing that we've done in recent eras, is we've added more cross-referencing, but you don't actually want to list it twice, because if you list the same thing in 2 different ways, then you're going to have weird things happen. Like, for instance, your inventory will not necessarily make sense. When you post it to a place for sale, it'll be ambiguous as to which one were you talking about. And then it can get very strange, as like you might have it for one price in one place and one price in the other, but if you're really referring to the same item, then what was the price? We don't know. But one thing we did do, another thing recently, and this great excuse to talk about another field we have here, is we do have the ability to cross-reference stuff across both titles and across items. So there's a new field we added in here. Let's see if I can zoom in, called item title. And where this, matter of fact, I used this one just today because I was looking for a free comic book day one where someone over at our office had not gotten the barcode in quite right. And so I was like, where is blah, blah, blah? And because they put the item title in properly, I was able to find it quite rapidly. So it was something like Unico :Awakening. And it's a Scholastic free comic book day book about a unicorn, and they had the wrong barcode on it because something had happened wrong with some submission, and so it didn't come up by barcode, and also it was not the Awakening, it was just Awakening. Both these things, by the way, are going to get fixed in this week's update, so don't worry about that. But one thing that was really great about it is, even though the official name of this book was something like Scholastic Free Comic Book Day Unico the Awakening, because we have this new field here of item title, where you can actually say, oh, yeah, okay, the Free Comic Book Day 2024 from Scholastic, that's its official designation. If you look at its indicia, its title, if you looked at the cover on it, would say Unico Awakening. And so when you search for things, even if it's not the title itself, you have a way to say, oh, there are things in other titles called Unico the Awakening, but that one just happens to be the Scholastic Free Comic Book Day, and it would find it under either way. A more classic version of the same problem is, think about Classics Illustrated, right? Every edition of Classics Illustrated had a different cover title, or 4-color comics. It might say Porky Pig, it might say Donald Duck's, Adventures in Goldland, or Uncle Scrooge's Adventures in Goldland, or something. And if you didn't know, just because you didn't follow the lore enough, you'd look at the cover title and you'd say, okay, down, Scrooge's Adventures in Goldland, and you'd never find the thing in a comic guide because it's really Four Color Comics number 1011 or something. Or the Three Musketeers is really Classics Illustrated issue number 1. So what this lets us do is it lets us say, okay, we've got a series which is Classics Illustrated, where you organize it by its official name, its official designation. But if you're looking for stuff and you don't immediately find it, and you just type in like the Three Musketeers, you'll get a listing for anything that's actually titled Three Musketeers. But you'll also see, and here's items in other series called the Three Musketeers, and it will allow you to find them that way as well. So you can have cross-referencing that way, and it's a cool thing. Similarly, we have a thing on the title level, the series level, where sometimes you have books that are part of a larger series, and they might even have multiple issues under each one. But a classic example is, think about like James Bond, right? Casino Royale would be book 1 of the James Bond novels, or I'm not sure, like there was the Doc Samson novels or the Conan novels, or so forth. And so Conan of the Isles might be might be number 3, or the third title under the various Conan novels. Jack Reacher, any kind of ongoing character like that, this works perfectly. In that case, we have a thing inside the titles where you can say, is this part of an overall series? Like, is Die Trying, is that book 6 of the Jack Reacher novels, and so forth. And so you can find it under either Die Trying, or you can find it under Jack Reacher novels, and it'll say, oh, here's books 1 through 17 of the Jack Reacher novels. So yeah, we spent a lot of time with this weird librarian stuff. So anyway, that's what we've been doing. Okay. And Department of Comics also says, so we can use the item title to be the actual indices title. Yeah, you can, but if the cover title is exactly the same as the item title, then it's kind of pointless, right? Because you would have found it under the cover title anyway. The right application for the item title is when you're staring at the cover and it's markedly different than what its real name is. Because if I'm looking at a copy of Porky Pig and it really is Porky Pig issue number 15, right? Well, then I just put Porky Pig. I wouldn't say, and the item title is Porky Pig, because I don't need to. But if it's if 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is really Four Color Comics issue number 248 or something, that's where that feature really makes sense. So you really want to use the item title for when it doesn't look like the official title. All right, hopefully we got it, and I'm gonna move on. All right. Other things going on. All right, so a guy had called yesterday on this one, basically having some trouble about installing pictures. You got the pictures down, but he's saying like, man, this is taking all day to install. And my standard answer on anything like that is always going to be check your antivirus software. I don't know if you guys ever follow a YouTube channel called Jay's 2 Cents. He's one of these computer geeks, he builds computers for a living, does testing and benchmarking, and he's got his whole shop and so forth. But I was really happy to hear him have a list of it was like 5 things I wouldn't put on my machine even if they were free. And the first ones, I think the number 2 things he mentioned was Norton or McAfee, and other things like that. Look, our official position as a company is you own your machine, it's not our business, and so forth. Now, as the guy who just asked to answer a lot of tech support calls, if your machine's running like a dog, if it's just being awful, if everything that should take 2 seconds is taking 2 minutes, the very first thing I would check before I worried about a failing hard drive, before I worried about anything else, buying a new machine, is, are you running some kind of insane antivirus suite that is just beating the crap out of the performance on your machine? Because that is far and away the number one problem when everything's taking way the hell too long on a new machine. Once upon a time, Norton was this wonderful utility which fixed disk errors and bad registry things and stuff like that. And they've been stacking on this thing for decades. Same thing goes for McAfee. Same thing goes for all of them. And very frequently, not only are they, just burning the crud out of your disk and your CPU, trying to cross-check and verify every little file that comes up anywhere on your PC all the time. But the other thing that's going on in the whole thing is that sometimes they fight with each other. So if you're running one guy's antivirus and the other guy's, internet suite, and the other guy's, the other thing, you can be going through multiple levels of this foo, and it just churns into hell. What this Going back to the original question here is, you're trying to install the thumbnails, little teeny tiny files. I mean, they're like a K each, but there's like a million of them of all the pictures that show up when you're installing ComicBase. So let me flip back to that other machine here, which I have over here right there. So when you're looking down this machine and you see all these little thumbnails of the different spawn covers and things like that, these files are teeny, right? And the beauty of the way that they work on the archive edition is as soon as I click on one of them, it instantly downloads the full version of one, and it shows me the 4K 4K image on this one, and did it as quickly as I could click. That part's pretty darn cool. But when it's doing the initial install of all these graphics over there, these things should be installing thousands per minute. I mean, it's the entire install, I believe, on this $249 demo machine that we had going here for the program, the preliminary databases, the download time, and all million plus things. I want to say the timed install for the entire thing was like 16 minutes, right? So if you're installing, and again, this is on a $249 PC, right? So this is no big shakes. If you're trying the same trick and it's taking you 3 hours or some crazy number like that, it's your antivirus. I can virtually guarantee it. What's almost certainly happening is we're decompressing a million files, and as we decompress every single one of these teeny little files, your antivirus is saying, whoa, 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 wait a minute, I better check that out. And it's going nuts, cycling over the sheer number of files involved, and they're all JPEG files. We have a message during the install which says, by the way, if this is running slow, consider turning off your antivirus. And I realized that sounds sketch as hell. I mean, it's exactly what I would tell someone if I were trying to do them dirty. But it is actually true in this case. Is if you know you're going to be doing something that involves installing a lot of anything, and you're doing it on purpose, you're not just clicking some random link that someone gave you or something like that, but you're installing stuff for real, turn off your antivirus first, because the antivirus can only get in the way. And if you're installing a lot of things, like a million pictures, definitely turn it off, because it's going to really bog down your system. And definitely, I would also say, as a secondary thing, consider just using the built-in one in Windows, Windows Defender. It's fantastic, and it's free. Works like a charm. It's about as unobtrusive as these sorts of programs can be. One thing kind of breaks my heart, after we did just a ton of testing on, to try to speed up installs. I mean, that was one of the major focuses we had last time out. Breaks my heart is when we went to just extraordinary measures to turn off even the Windows antivirus. We could get the entire install to work on our demo PC in like 6 minutes. So even Windows Defender will exert quite a penalty, all things considered. But it's 16 minutes is better than 3 hours. 6 minutes would have been better, just saying. But yeah, there's actually kind of, if you're not running any other antivirus software, there is kind of no way, without doing just extraordinary things to the registry and group policies, to not be running at least Windows Defender. So it is what it is. But anyway, give that a shot. All right, let's see here. Okay. Yes, and the next question came in and says, like, hey, I've got a price that just seems weird. And I don't remember at the moment whether the price that he was looking at in the database was really weird, or if it was, because sometimes I don't know why that copy of Richie Rich is $90, but that is apparently the only place that it's selling for, so it is what it is. That's the nice thing about the pricing in ComicBase, is we don't generally try to tell you what the price ought to be. We just kind of grind the market, and we tell you what people are selling things for. But that being said, there are legitimately times when the algorithm gets it wrong, or like enough people get it wrong that kind of like the group hysteria around something it kind of becomes almost like self-perpetuating. A classic example, it's harder to do now than it used to be, because we have additional methods on this one. But if like you and 5 of your buddies all decided that a particular issue of Bugs Bunny was worth $800, right? And you all kind of morphed your prices within a certain range to get it near there, you might be able to get it to zoom up there, and it would work exactly up until the point where someone actually sold a copy of that same issue for not $800, at which point it would just immediately blast back to the level it should have been all along. But there can be times. Remember, we're tracking 1.25 million comic books and 3 million other items of other things. There can be times when like the price is legit. Like now, something went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. You're like, one of your editors put a dollar sign in the wrong place or something. At which point, the thing to do, if you ever see something that just is like, dude, this just it's wrong, and I can, I bet my life on it. So like, say I'm going up to Spawn #1, which I think we have at $32, which actually is probably bang dead on because there's a lot of copies of it, and we see them. But let's say for whatever reason, the Image 2010 edition of it, you're certain that $575 is the wrong price. Like, let's say someone's got it for $575, or or it's coming that way in the database. What you want to do is click on it, and all these things. Click to the far left here to highlight the whole row. Right click then and click on Request Price Check. And what it'll do is says like, all right, well, it kind of gives you a little, bit of the spiel I just did right there. It says, all right, look, it says right now it's 500. Let's say this meant was $575. And you say, look, man, no, it ought to be no more than $6. And it'll ask you, well, why? And then you'll say things like, well, I'm looking on eBay and I'm seeing it for $6, or it was at my local comic store. It was only $6, whatever the thing is. But tell us what you think the price ought to be and why. And then what will happen is that goes straight to our editors. It's probably like the #1 priority thing that they will hit in the course of a day when those things happen. And they will immediately find whatever alternate sources we've got for pricing to verify, either that we're right or that, to make adjustments immediately. And it goes out into the next, weekly update right away. So if you do see something that you think is just wrong, don't call us up and argue with us. I mean, what is actually helpful is highlight the issue in question. Tell us what you think it ought to be. Tell us why you think it ought to be that one. And also, please don't say because I read some other guide and the other guide said this. I don't care about the other guide. We couldn't use the information if we had to. It has to be based on something real. Like a real thing you're seeing for sale, a real listing on eBay. Don't quote another price guide at us. It's absolutely useless to us. But if you have real data that says like, no, you got it wrong, we want to get that fixed immediately, and we, like I say, we'll pull up all the other things that we have access to and do a manual review of those things, and get it stitched up immediately. Okay, so let me see here. I think I'm hearing that the focus slipped a little bit. Sorry about that, guys. So it could be the beer goggles thing. If I jerk around quickly enough, I can fool the focus on the camera. But anyway, so it goes. All right. So I think that's about it. Thank you everyone for coming. Brief announcements to everyone. And by the way, it's great to have you all here. Please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. And also, if you could drop even a quick comment about the stream, even just something like, Pete looks blurry, something like that. It's amazing how much that helps drive it in the algorithm to actually recommend the channel to other people on YouTube and other places like that. And she says a little bit, I don't know, man. Anyway, but please hit the like, hit the subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. And that's about it. In the meantime, go and pull yourselves a cold one. I don't know what the rest of y'all out here, but it's beautiful out here in Franklin, Tennessee. And I'm going to go out my patio and enjoy this wonderful day. You guys have a good one. See you on the next one.